Now we're gonna get started on the arm. So we've seen so far us taking a whole chuck, we broke it into its two respective sections. Then we've taken that first section, the cavity, and we broke it into its primals. Now we're gonna do the exact same thing with this arm. We're gonna break it into its primals and then clean up those muscles. Basically what we have here is we have our shank, or our forearm, and then I've got this region right here, which is called my pectoral, right? So it's the animal's pecs. Underneath this bone, and this bone is referred to as the paddle bone, it's also the blade bone. So underneath it, but it's actually the top of the blade. So believe it or not, before we were dealing with the bottom blade, this is the top blade. And the top blade is comprised of two muscles. You've got the top blade Mocktender and top blade flat iron. And then we have what's called the clod, and that's one of the single strongest muscles of the animal, and it's its shoulder muscle. All right, so we're going to get started and to break this up into its respective pieces. I'm going to start with my pectoral. My pectoral region. Now I'm going to be removing this paddle bone to expose the top blade muscles. Tender. Here's my paddle bone, and as you can tell, in case of a flood, I could always canoe out of here. Okay. Flat iron. And this is that really strong muscle I was mentioning before. It's called our clod. The upper shoulder muscle. Also a very good pot roast. It's different from the blade in that this one is a lot leaner. So if you're looking for a leaner option, the clod is the way you want to go. And then finally I have my shank. This is the bicep. The bicep is not a particularly popular muscle, and so this tends to either go into stewing beef or into ground beef. I'll just be making a cut on the bandsaw to remove my shank, and this will be broken down into its respective pieces. So if you'd like to join me over by the bandsaw, you're welcome to. that first muscle I removed, or group of muscles I removed, called the pectoral region, there's really one sensational muscle in here. And the Healthy Butcher has really sensationalized this muscle. We certainly didn't invent it, we just sensationalized it. And that is what is called the Petite Tender. We refer to it as the Clod hammer. And it is a very, very tender muscle. This is one of those supportive muscles. It's the rotator cuff, or the teres minor, of the beef. It is extremely tender. And because it's not very well known, it's very, very well priced. But as you can tell, on a 600-pound carcass, this piece might weigh a half a pound. So there's not very much of it on the whole carcass. Clod hammer. The rest of the pectoral, you could cut some nice stir fry out of it, but in general, a lot of people don't bother putting much time or effort into it. The steaks out of here are not that popular. They're not bad, they're just not that popular. Okay, so here we have the flat iron, and this to me is one of those muscles that is definitely worth the wait. The flat iron is also part of the top blade, and engineers have taken this muscle to a stress test, and this is the second most tender muscle according to stress tests. What makes this muscle appear to be tough is that it is encapsulated with elastin, or gristle. So it's got a big piece of elastin running through the middle of it, and it's got it running through the outside of it. So it's important that we get rid of all that elastin. Once we do, though, we free up these muscle fibers and it becomes quite tender. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split it along So now we have two pieces of flat iron. And now my goal is to remove all the elastin. Okay, so there you have it. We have our flat irons and our clod hammers, and these are two supportive muscles. They're not being used by the animal very much, and so therefore they're outstandingly tender, very, very flavorful, and very well priced. Hope you enjoyed. Over on this side here, we've got a mixture of muscles. The shank is an absolutely stunning muscle that we can cut discs out of, often referred to as ossobuco. This is what is called the Mocktender. Also a nice lean muscle to cut either stew or use as a braising roast. And then I've got my clod, and this is another one of those great braising braising roasts, also referred to as the cross rib roast. And then, of course, I've got my canoe paddle, with which I'm going to paddle out of here and say good day.